Sean or Marianne, if you can let me know when we're ready. It looks like we arrive at 12.
We're ready to start anytime you want to start, Chino. We're all set.
All right, let's get going. So thank you all for joining us on the town hall for this afternoon. I really appreciate it. It seems like this is our first town hall of the year. A lot of good things happened in 2022. I have high expectations for 2023, very ambitious projects throughout the organization, a lot of challenges that we are going to face together. But I have no doubt in my mind that we'll get through them and we will ascend and arrive at the right places at the end of the FY. Some of the events that have already taken place in early the first quarter, we've been surveyed multiple times already, and we came across the surveys with high marks, excellent mark, positive feedback. All those areas where we need to improve will be improved, and all those areas where we're doing great, we are showing the rest of the division what best business practice is all about. In our journey to HRO, we'll continue to growth. We'll continue to enhance our HRO trajectory, and hopefully we'll become one of those facilities within the VA that becomes an exemplar for the rest of the VA to follow. A couple of things that I wrote on my and I should have said this up front. The rest of the leadership is busy today with other activities involving the Vision Network. So if you don't see them on a call today, please, they extend their most sincere apologies for not being present. For us to continue to build on our success, there are a couple of things that we talk about it quite a bit, and it's difficult to have that follow-up. When we live in a world of metrics, where everything is a number or a percentage that must be achieved, it's important to recognize that how do we get there is truly a team effort. All ideas are good ideas, and we have to listen to everybody and what they have to say. Operations is something that is recognized at the work in hand level. You know, where the work takes place, that's where the best ideas come from. I will ask and urge all our managers and supervisors to extend recognition throughout their workplace, to hold accountability as the compass to do good deeds. Accountability is not necessarily punitive in nature, but it's necessary to show the good work that we do. Be transparent in everything we do. And let's concentrate and continue to do team building for all of us. It's important that Albany maintains a high level of cohesiveness because we're small and a lot of eyes are on us. So I can tell you from my chair, I see every single day that when I come to work, how well we do when we come together to achieve a goal. In some instances, in the case of adversity, we really have knocked it off the park. And that is not by mistake or a forced hand. That is because we believe in our mission, we believe in our goals, we believe in our values, and we exercise that every single day. So in 2023, that for me, and I believe I speak on behalf of the rest of the leadership team, that's the expectation. Let's continue to do the good work that we're already doing. Let's enhance our abilities and let's reach for the sky. That is the only limit that I see for Albany. That's all I have. Marianne, do we go to by the agenda here? We got the 4 topics.
Yes, Sean, the next slide. Sean, I think you have an old copy of the, let me upload the slides. I'm sorry, I apologize. You have an old copy of the presentation.
Oh,
Just
I'm
a moment.
sorry, Marianne.
Nope, that's okay. I apologize, everyone. Gino, did you want to review the Dignity and Respect campaign?
So I can talk about it real quick, and I don't know if we have Tarita, our new EO officer, on the call.
Rita should be on, yes.
All right. Tarita, you want to take it all off from here, or I can just talk to it?
Chino, I would appreciate if you do it because I'm having a bit of a coughing fit. So
Okay. So we'll cover down on it.
thank you.
During my NEO, when I receive new employees coming into the facility, we talk about HR and we talk about a lot of things. One of the things that I trying to stress and inform everybody is the recognition that we all come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different values. And the last thing that I would like to do to anybody that I work with is to change their mindset. That's something that I strongly believe has to be done on their own. But on the same sentence, I try to tell them that in order for us to build a team of excellence, respect has to be paramount. It has to be in everything we do, that we have to recognize that not liking somebody doesn't mean that we have to stop being professionals towards each other. When we come to work here, I also tell people that there are two lives that we live as civil servants. We live our work life and our private life. In our private life and our work life should never mix. Sometimes it does, right? And as people come in and they have something that is not related to work affecting their work, and vice versa. Respect sort of drives that in a way that enables us to facilitate the human factor in all of us. Okay. From the VHA Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Assault and Harassment Prevention, they recognize 7 pillars of dignity and respect that should be practiced on a day-to-day life. When it says starts with you, I recognize that it starts with all of us, right? We all have to recognize that when we're talking to somebody, when we addressing somebody, when I'm addressing this crowd, for example, that I have to do it in a way that is meaningful, respectful, and with full understanding of how everybody's going to perceive what I'm saying on whatever platform that I'm speaking from. Sweat that small stuff. What that means is it might be insignificant to some and carries a lot of punch to others. So we need to be very mindful of how we are perceived and how we express ourselves and recognize that we share our world with everybody else. So our workspace is our world. When we come here into this sphere in the Albany VA Medical Center campus, everything we do have an effect in others, and we have to recognize that every single day. To build the cultural awareness, the more I know about you and the more you know about me, the easier we can facilitate respect towards one another. I don't think that's difficult. I think that we should keep a mind wide open and recognize that the diverse world that we live in should be welcomed with open arms, and not with suppression or restrictions. Find common ground. That should be the number one rule when you come to the table at anything we do. Common ground enables and empowers us to facilitate the goals and achieve the goals that we put in front of us. If we cannot do that, imagine for 1 second, if you will, how difficult it is for any of us to accomplish anything if we don't recognize that it cannot be done alone by ourselves. We need additional help. Join the team. You know, don't stay on the sideline and tell the rest of the world how things are. Be part of the solution. You know, be a voice. Nothing that we do, I can assure you, at least from my chair, because I face it every single day, and the executive teams face exactly that every single day. Nothing we do is perfect or written in the book of instructions. We have to really be fully dependent in our employees, fully dependent in the organization, fully dependent in our ability to get through each and every day. We ask you to join the team because we really need you to be part of the team. We need you to be part of the answer. We need you to exercise your minds. Your opinion matters to us. And the more we know about how you feel and how we can do better on your behalf, the better we be at it. Lead the way. Everyone is a leader in my mind. When I'm talking to people, a lot of times it sounds cliche, but I tell people, take the lead. Be the leader. Tell us how it's done. Tell us how we should proceed. Tell us what's the best option, right? All we have to do is mitigate risk. And if the risk is mitigated, the outcome is going to be favorable for the veterans. We all come to serve the veterans, and everything we do is about the veterans. So if you have a better way of doing something, but you're the only one that know it, it's going to be difficult to put it out there on a platform where it can be seen by others. And for me, the last one there is do the right thing. Doing the right thing is the most difficult thing for any human being to do. We all by nature like to take those risks. The sign says 55 miles an hour, but we are going to do 65 because we can get away with it. And we're going to push it to 70 because we're wondering if anybody's going to catch us. And we go to 80 because we hoping nobody's going to be out there watching. So do the right thing. It doesn't matter how difficult and painful it might be to do it. Get there mentally, physically, emotionally. Know that when you're doing the right thing, not only you are the benefactor of your actions, but everybody else around you is a benefactor of your actions. And it goes, all of it combined goes back to recognizing our place, holding ourselves and others accountable, being full transparency to everything we do, and building a team that we can all be proud of. I don't know if any one of you out there have anything to add to what I just described as the 7 pillars of dignity and respect, but it goes a long ways. I think that we here at Albany, we exercise that every single day. When I come to work, I see it through the hallways. When I go and do roundings and the leadership do roundings, we experience it, we see it. But from time to time, there's those occasions where we tend to forget that there are others next to us, left and right of us, that are impacted by our actions, by the way we behave and the way we are. And if it seems insignificant to you, it might not be to others. So I will encourage everybody to consciously do your very best every single day to make yourself and others worth the time and the place that you're working and what you're representing to others. For us, the objective is to give the veterans the best healthcare services that we can provide them. We feel strongly that they have earned it, and that's the best thing that we can do when we come here in this building. Questions for anyone? Does anybody wants anything to add? This is open forum. And it seems like somebody had their hands up. I'm not sure.
I think that was just a error, Chino, because it went down.
Okay.
But,
All right.
but to piggyback on what you said, Chino, I was just thinking while you were talking, a lot of it feels like when I was working in Instant Command during the pandemic, a lot of the problems we would be confronted with, our solutions came from the bottom up. So I think everything you said is really important or it made me think of that, I guess I should say.
Okay, and just to be sure where the slide come from and why we're trying to do this, right? It's a Dignity and Respect campaign launched by the VHA, and we are going to focus on a new pillar each month and talk about it, run it through all our meetings, run it through all our morning report, and emphasize each one of these pillars until we become, in my mind, we're already there, a facility of excellence, and in my mind, we already do a lot of what the expectation set forward by this slide is, but we're just going to improve on it, get better at it, and recognize that we can become a place for others to follow. And that's the goal that we should have. We do a lot of good things in Albany, and a lot of people outside of Albany recognizes that. And I can tell you, every department, every place in this facility get recognition from outside entities. I wonder sometimes if everybody in the facility understands that or knows that, but it's not by coincidence. I'm not going out there advertising Albany. Albany advertised themselves in their own right. So please recognize that.
Thank you, Tino. Sean, next slide. So we're going to talk about whistleblower protection today. It's a required training for our facility, and I know we discuss it on our on previous town halls. We discuss it during our bi-monthly State of the Union with the supervisors and managers. So we'll continue to discuss whistleblower protection. Again, it's a required training for all the staff in the facility. We're hoping to provide foundational knowledge of what a whistleblower is and whistleblower protection for everybody. So what is a whistleblower? It's someone who makes a protected disclosure or engages in a protected activity. Protected disclosures. An employee is a whistleblower if he or she reports or makes a complaint about a violation of law, rule, or regulation, gross mismanagement, gross waste of funds, an abuse of authority, a substantial and specific danger to public health or safety, or censorship related to research, analysis, or technical information. Disclosures can be made to a member of Congress, the Office of the Special Counsel, Office of Inspector General, Secretary of VA, any management official, the White House, the Government Accountability Office, any media outlet, and any employee. So you can receive, as an employee, you can receive a protected disclosure. As long as the whistleblower reasonably believes that it's true, it's protected. So for example, if the associate director is taking home a government, the reasonable belief was that the associate director is taking home a government-owned vehicle and is using it over the weekend, but in reality, the associate director just bought a used GSA fleet car that looks exactly the same as a government vehicle. It doesn't matter what an employee reports or complains about, if it was already disclosed to you or someone else, why it was disclosed, or was it disclosed off duty? Was it disclosed because it was required by the normal duties of the employee's job? Was it disclosed to the person who participated in the wrongdoing? The whistleblower's personal motivation for making the complaint doesn't matter. The employee is still considered a whistleblower. Employees are not required to report problems or make complaints through the chain of command. If you hear yourself saying the words chain of command, quote unquote, you may be in whistleblower protection retaliation, whistleblower retaliation territory. Protected activities, filing a grievance, appeal, or other complaint, union grievances, EEO complaints, etc. Testifying or help someone else file a grievance, appeal, or other complaint, cooperating with or making complaint to Office of Special Counsel or OIG, or refusal to obey a legal order are considered protected activities. An employee engaged in an activity that he or she reasonably believed to be a protected disclosure. This is what the whistleblower has to prove. The employee knew about the protected disclosure and the identity of the employee making the disclosure. The employer knew. The employer too failed to take action or threatened to take or influenced an official to take personnel action against the employee, and the protected disclosure was a contributing factor in the personnel action. The VA has to prove that to show by clear and convincing evidence that it would have taken the same action without the disclosure. Clear and convincing evidence factors include the strength of the evidence in support of the personnel action, existence and strength of a motive to retaliate, and treatment of similar employees who are not whistleblowers. Retaliation against a whistleblower. Staff cannot take or direct others to take or recommend or approve a personnel action against an employee or applicant for disclosing information which the employee or applicant reasonably believes evidences of violation of law, rule, or regulation, gross mismanagement, gross waste of funds, an abuse of authority, or substantial and specific danger to public health or safety. There's two TMS whistleblower protection courses. Everyone needs to take the Whistleblower Rights and Protections VA 39953, and supervisors must take Supervisor Whistleblower Rights and Protections VA 39949. Those are the two TMS courses. If you have any questions about which course you're required to take, you can reach out to our education office, and the information on how to contact the Office of Whistleblower Protection is on the screen below. Does anyone have any questions about whistleblower protection? Okay, Thanks, Sean. The next thing we're going to discuss is the PACT Act and the key initiatives. So PACT Act, most of you hopefully have already heard the term PACT Act, may not know exactly what it means, but we'll discuss it a little bit today. Certainly can expand on it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Peter Potter. You can reach out to me or Sean Tuckey to get additional information about PACT Act or where to find additional information about PACT Act. PACT Act expands eligibility for veterans of the Vietnam era, Gulf era, and post 9/11 era. It includes exposures to a variety of agents, including nuclear, biological, chemical, and physical agents, including sound, vibration, noise, x-rays, those are all included. It's expected to be one of the largest expansions of veteran benefits in healthcare in VA's history. They expect that it'll impact up to several million veterans. It authorizes 31 new facilities across the country, which will provide greater access to VA healthcare. Sean, hold on, I just lost my note.
You know, Mariana, while you're looking for your note, the big takeaway for this for staff, the way I've come to think of it, and I don't know if Peter's on, he can add on to it. There's more ways now to make a veteran eligible than there has been at any point that I've worked at the hospital in the last 15 years. And I mean that, but I say that I mean like if you meet a veteran at the grocery store and they're like, yeah, I applied to the VA in 1996 and they told me I made too much money. And if they served during the first Gulf War and they have environmental exposures, the clock has reset. We can re-register and get them in the system and get them set up with primary care because of the PACT Act. So if you meet veterans and they say, you know, oh, I served, you know, during the first Gulf War, but I was told 5 years ago I make too much money, this is a good opportunity for them to reapply, and they'll be reconsidered. I think that's where that gets lost in the translation a little. I think it's something that we as employees, as we're looking to connect veterans with their healthcare, is something that we should remember.
Very
Hey,
good.
Sean, I would like to add something to that. There's two things that I've noticed that are probably the most important. A lot of people think PACT Act and they think the more recent veterans who've come from service because we all hear on the news about burn pits. It's very important to know that this is Vietnam era forward. A lot of the things that they're including, there are some additional conditions that are associated with Agent Orange exposure. So this is a misconception that is easily made out there. The second thing is, again, we always hear about burn pits, but the PACT Act goes much further beyond burn pits to include things like physical things like vibration exposure, X-ray exposure, exposure to chemicals other than burn pits. And I think that's an easy misconception because of what you hear in the media today and what most people glom onto, because let's face it, burn pits has been in the news quite a bit. So it's beyond just burn pits, and it's about the exposures. And it also includes nuclear, which has always been very difficult for veterans to get linked to because it's such a wide array of different types of exposures. And even as far as going to certain paints, special paints that they use on vehicles. So, you know, when we hear any veteran talking about any type of exposure, we should be pointing them to the PACT Act because it's more than just a burn pit type of legislation. So.
Thanks, Peter. Sean, can you advance to the next slide, please? So how does this impact VHA? Every enrolled veteran will receive an initial screening and a follow-up screening once every 5 years. During their screenings, a veteran will be asked questions about potential exposures to, like Peter said, burn pit or other hazards that are associated with military environmental exposures. Any veteran who's not enrolled but does meet eligibility requirements has the opportunity to enroll to receive that screening. Your healthcare providers in our facility have already had training. They'll receive additional training and education on toxic exposures. Sean, next slide, please. VA provides a phased approach to the hospital care, medical services, nursing home care for any of the illnesses for the new categories for all veterans. Category 1 is any veteran participating in a toxic exposure risk activity while serving on active duty for training, or inactive duty. So that includes the Guard and Reserves. Category 2, veterans were assigned to a duty location in certain areas during certain specific periods of time. Probably heard on the news and in our some of our VA mailings that talk about Camp Lejeune and the water exposure to veterans that were assigned there during that time. And category 3 is veterans that were deployed in support of specific campaigns. Sean, next slide. There's over 20 new presumed conditions that are going to be service connected due to various toxic exposures. If you want some additional information on the screen right there, there's additional information for VA employees, and you can also through those websites you can also find additional information for veterans. Does anybody have any questions about PACT Act? Great. Okay, we're going to introduce, Sean, next slide, please. We're going to introduce Mary Ellen Pichet as our HRO leader coach for Albany. She comes from VHA High Reliability Organization Support Team, and she's a contractor with the National Patient Safety Center for Patient Safety. Alicia Ryder is also on. She's our patient safety HRO lead. And I'll let Mary Ellen continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to be back here with my friends at the Albany VA. And if we go to the next slide, please, I'll introduce our topic. So what we're going to talk about aligns very well with the Dignity and Respect campaign that Chino mentioned earlier. And so we're going to talk about Just Culture today, and we're going to go to the next slide. And so Just Culture is, okay. So is somebody going to tell us a safety story?
Yes.
All right, then I'll switch to you before I get into my presentation.
Sorry, Mary Ellen. Alicia?
Yes, thank you. We have Nancy Wells on to present our safety story. Could you go to the next slide, please? Nancy, are you on?
I'm on.
Okay, thank you.
So in the usual course of procedural scheduling, patients are contacted by phone by the GI clinical care coordinator. Point of contact is to ensure scheduling efforts have been effective and procedure orders and instructions are in place so the patient gets the care they need and has their expectations met. The care coordinator contacted this patient and immediately recognized multiple red flags to this patient having an upper endoscopy in the following week as planned. First was the unavailability of a driver to convey him to and from his procedure. Second was that he was undomiciled. Third was that he had recently developed severe abdominal pain that had not been medically evaluated. And last was that he had not had follow-up for a pre-pandemic endoscopic cancer resection. The action was the care coordinator directed the patient to the emergency room for evaluation of his pain, which he declined. She then contacted a physician in this section to review the case and then assisted in coordinating his early direct admission to the hospital for additional assessment prior to his procedure, where he was evaluated and found to have had an acute kidney injury and kidney stones obstructing one of his ureters. Urology was consulted and stents were placed the following day, along with a Foley catheter, and hydration was provided. The care coordinator worked quickly with VA and OSH personnel to reschedule the patient's procedure to the following day after the case was reviewed by GI, urology, and hospital medicine staff. She also rescheduled the patient's transportation to and from VA to the OSH and followed up with the OSH GI physicians to ensure the patient was stable to be returned to our VA for additional supportive care. The patient was then held as an inpatient for supportive care in anticipation of a follow-up procedure and returned to the OSH after a few days to receive definitive treatment for his underlying condition. Patient expressed gratitude for the extraordinary efforts of that GI coordinator to get him care he urgently needed, in addition to the care he was planning to have. Ultimately, a challenging situation prompted the GI care coordinator to muster considerable resources appropriate to this patient's needs so that he could receive needed care safely. Although much was done to accomplish an ordinarily simple task, it was the right thing to do and may have even prevented an adverse outcome for the patient, whose case might have simply been canceled were it not for the GI care coordinator's reluctance to simplify. Sometimes the shortest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. Sometimes complex problems warrant complex solutions. Commit to recognizing situations where resource-intensive solutions are needed and don't hesitate. Call for help to get a challenging job done right.
Thanks, Nancy. Did anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, next slide, please. Chino, did you want to talk about the HRO theme of the month, reluctance to simplify, and the importance of our JPSR system?
I'm on it.
Thank you.
Bear with me. At my age, you gotta have notes. So reluctance to simplify is basically a means to achieve or understand where things could be different, change the process, and look at the root cause of where we're making a mistake. It's usually you can trace it back to two things in my mind, and Mary Ellen, if you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what we're going to always find is that is human error can be directly traced back to a process error, and when we take the human factor out of the equation and we just concentrate on the process, then we have the ability to make things better for those to follow. In the VA, the JPSR was established to do just that, to enable all employees to have a platform, a place that they can go to and report any incident, any error, any condition that needed to be paid attention to. If we can go to the next slide. So safety events and risk is basically in our setting, in our scenario, what we confronted with every single day when we come to work. If you think about today, just today, we had a storm last night, we deposited X amount of snow, appointments were canceled, not all veterans were able to make it into the facility, not all personnel was able to make it into the facility, and we have to adjust to that. In the course of the day, we find that the conditions that were presented today for us had a trickle effect or domino effect into a condition that posed a risk. Again, it's one of those things that if you don't think about it, if you don't consciously looking at it from that organizational perspective, operational perspective, it goes by you real quick and doesn't get the attention it deserves. JPSR enables us to do that. It gives us a platform and a place where we can just put the information in and is reviewed by others, professionals, subject matter experts, and then come back to us with a different direction, a different approach to our day-to-day. So I don't know if how many, I don't want to see short hands, but I'm hoping that in this facility we are using JPSR daily, that we recognize the importance of using it, the importance of reporting on any safety or risk condition that we might come across to in a meaningful manner. It's not a place where we just complain about our day. I want to make distinction on that. It's a place where we can make things better. So we need a complete construct of what was observed, what we saw, and how do we feel it can be done differently. Can we go to the next slide?
Thanks, Chino. That's all we had. Next is Mary Ellen. She's going to be presenting on just culture.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And so if you want people to report JASPERS as they happen and identify opportunities for improve, you have to have a culture of safety in which people are treated justly. So you may remember in the past, cultures in healthcare were rather punitive, that we were always looking to blame the person. Then we shifted, we overcorrected, and essentially was carte blanche. Okay. We are now a blame-free organization where we don't factor in the human element. So the sweet spot, and that's what we're trying to promote now, is a just culture. And that's where it's fair to patients and staff alike. Next slide, please. The single greatest impediment to error prevention in the medical industry is that we punish people for making mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to fail forward. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. And as Chino said, almost all of the things that go wrong are not so much people dependent. Somebody wanted to do something wrong, but the systems and the processes get in the way of them doing the right thing. Next slide, please. While the exact number of deaths in the United States as a result of medical errors remains controversial, we don't know for sure, but what is clear is that underreporting is a common and challenging impediment to improving patient safety. If we don't know, we can't fix. Evidence shows that one of the most significant reasons for underreporting is the fear of negative consequences associated with reporting. And so underreporting impacts the ability to improve patient safety. If people are reluctant to step up and say, I made a mistake, this went wrong, help me find out what the problem is, let's work on correcting this together. That's what you're looking for. Next slide, please. Oh, and I should have mentioned, just jump in the chat if you like. As I talk here, if you have any questions or comments, and I'll specifically ask you to engage when I go through 3 scenarios for just culture application, okay? So improving patient safety requires that high reliability organizations strive to ensure the culture of the organization is trusting and just. In a trusting and just culture, adverse events are recognized as valuable opportunities to understand those factors that contribute to the breakdown and learn rather than immediately assign blame. This requires a paradigm shift for many healthcare organizations. Now, I know you recently had an IG review, and they gave feedback that the culture of safety was alive and well at the Albany VA, that they thought it was ingrained in the staff. So you're well on your journey. Next slide, please. Okay, the principles of just culture require a shift in the way healthcare organizations have typically and traditionally responded to adverse events. In the past, it was customary for medical errors to be addressed by immediately assigning blame and punishing the individual involved. I know when I worked at the VA, this is what happened. Of course, we know that was 100 years ago. With a just culture, it's acknowledged that errors don't occur only as a result of individual behavioral choices. Rather, errors also occur as a result of system and process failures. A just culture approach promotes learning, managing behavioral choices, and designing safe systems to prevent the recurrence of adverse events. What did we learn? What can we do better? Next slide, please. So you may be familiar with the decision support tool, and hopefully you're using that in your organization. And this was introduced during baseline training. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you where we're going to zero in the next part of our discussion. Right in this area where, whoops.
Sorry, Mary Ellen.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, in this area of human error, at-risk behavior, and reckless behavior, because as Chino mentioned, it doesn't happen too often where there's an adverse event because of impaired judgment or somebody was malicious in their actions. It usually falls into the next three categories. And so that's where we're going to spend our time. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the same behavioral choices that were described in HRO baseline training, you may recall. So they fall into three categories: human error, which are unintentional errors, lapses in judgment, or forgetfulness or drift. Then we go up to the next tier, at-risk behavior. There's a decreased awareness of risk and belief that the risk is insignificant or justified. And then there's reckless behavior. They're really counter to established standards, to your standard work, your SOPs, and there's a conscious disregard of risk. Next slide, please. So with human error, so that's the first category on the left, remedies should be aimed at consoling the individual, identifying ways to prevent a repeat situation, limiting the negative consequences, and providing opportunities for education. Individuals are not punished for at-risk behaviors. Instead, time is taken to coach individuals to understand how and why the incident occurred. Then if we take a look at reckless behavior, it is blameworthy, and the individual consciously disregarded the risk, which is substantial and unjustifiable, and so appropriate disciplinary actions are taken according to your organization's policies and procedures to address the misconduct. So the National Center for Public Safety developed this Just Culture decision support tool to help leaders respond to errors in a way that is consistent with a just culture, promoting fairness and balance between individual and system accountability. This isn't a get out of jail card free. It requires professionalism and accountability while identifying where things broke down and what the appropriate response should be. Next slide, please.
Mary Ellen, can I mention something if you can go back to the previous slide?
Absolutely.
I just want to reemphasize. For all of us, managers and supervisors and leaders, and anybody that leads any amount of group or people, it is important to recognize that reckless behavior has to be thoroughly investigated and looked at. You'll find that oftentimes, even in the surface, it look like it's a reckless behavior, and we find out that the person that committed the error or the action and judgment or something that led to a higher level risk was misinformed about their action and what they needed to do, what process they needed to follow, what SOP needed to be adhered to, and so on and so forth. So that the avoidance of any risk, the avoidance of any errors committed by another human beings is fully dependent on how well we practice doing the right things at all times and holding each other accountable at all times. So a lot of times, and I have found that to be the case in this facility, we look at it and sometimes we think it was reckless behavior until we start peeling that onion and find that it was just human error and a misinformed employee that obviously could have done better, but did not have the tools available to them at a time that they had to make a tough decision that caused a mistake.
Well, that's right, Chino. It's not a knee-jerk reaction, and that's why this tool is helpful to guide supervisors and leaders through a decision. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to take a look at applying the decision support tool across three behavioral choices related to medication administration. Now, I know that's a clinical example, but I want to, introduce a caveat here that this applies to all care and service that's delivered by all people in the medical center, in the C-box, and any place that you provide care. So I ask you to think about whether you're clinical or administrative. You all serve the veteran in some way. What would happen to the veteran if you don't do your jobs? What are the safety risks? So that's something to think about, to map yourself to the patient care, because if you're not directly delivering that care, you're supporting someone who is. Next slide, please. So here's scenario one. So when changing syringe pumps, administering highly concentrated meds in the critical care setting, the SOP is that it be performed by 2 nurses. A nurse chooses to forego the SOP because the unit is very busy and short-staffed. The rate of administration entered by the nurse was incorrect. The patient received too much medication and required intervention to reverse the adverse effect. So what action is needed to remedy this behavioral choice? So feel free to drop something into the chat. What do you think should be done? Coaching, re-education. Okay. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Thank you, Dory. Next slide, please, in the interest of time. Okay, this behavior would be classified at risk. She failed to follow the SOP, believing that the action was justifiable. She was held accountable for the error, he or she, and the appropriate remedy would be to coach the individual to see the risk related to the choice that was made. And sometimes we ask the question, as we use this tool, would 3 people in the same unit at the same competency level have responded and made the same choice? So you need to consider that. Another step I would take here is, what's the opportunity for improvement? If people are behaving this way, there's likely a reason. So having that conversation with the staff on the unit, what's getting in your way? What are the barriers of following the SOP, our standard procedures? Next slide, please. So here's another scenario. 2 critical care nurses change a syringe pump administering a highly concentrated med. The SOP was followed and the rate of administration entered was correct, but the patient had an adverse reaction reflecting the result of receiving too much medication and required intervention to rapidly reverse the overdose. Following an RCA, it was found that despite the nurses following the correct procedure, the infusion pump didn't function properly. The device was overdue for preventive maintenance, which resulted in the malfunction. What are your thoughts on the action needed to remedy this behavioral choice? Feel free to just drop something in the chat. Pretty quiet out there. I know you're thinking, so we'll go to the next slide. Pull out the preventive maintenance and see whether or not the process was followed. Right, so this is a systems problem. It was beyond the control of the nurse, and so the individual was not held personally accountable. And Dory, right again, so the nurse was consoled, and focus was placed on determining what the systems problems were. And so, yes, Chino, I would be asking the question, so if the PN didn't happen, well, why not? What are the process and systems issues that led to that omission? Next slide, please. Our final scenario. A critical care nurse receives a physician's order to begin a patient on a highly concentrated medication. SOP requires that it be administered with a syringe pump. Nurse is busy, decides to forego the use of the pump and administer it manually. Medication is administered too rapidly, patient deteriorates, requires swift intervention. As a result of the adverse event, the patient's hospital stay was extended by 5 days. What action is needed to remedy this behavioral choice? Next slide, please. Dory's right on it here. I think she's used the tool before. Yeah, so the nurse knowingly acted counter to established standards. So little regard for the risk, so disciplinary action was taken. Okay, very good. So we see how these different behaviors require different responses, but it's up to supervisors and managers and leaders to sort out the behavior and apply the tool accordingly. Next slide, please. Okay, Chino's asking why her decision to go manually, so he's not clinical. We're going to ask Dory to explain that to him offline because I know I'm running out of time. Is that okay? All right.
Work for me. I trust Doris.
Good, so do I. So as stated previously, a just culture requires a paradigm shift in how healthcare organizations address errors. The traditional punitive approach of assigning fault, where did that get us? People were reluctant to report things, so we didn't have the chance to treat people with respect, to treat them with dignity, and to identify systems and process errors that could be fixed. Next slide, please. So here's a great quote to highlight the need for balanced accountability. Just culture is about accountability for underlying systemic problems to improve safety and prevent harm. It's about people feeling safe saying, I made this mistake. Let's find out why. Next slide. So there's evolving evidence for how healthcare organizations can go about implementing just culture principles. And they're listed here, and I'm going to talk through each one of these. So let's go to the next slide and talk about engaging leadership. So implementation of a just culture can only take place if leaders are actively engaged in creating, encouraging, and sustaining change. They must be visible, accessible, approachable, and actively engage with staff to understand any questions related to culture change. So you do this through rounding, through safety huddles, through these safety forums. Being actively engaged sends a powerful and valuable message to staff regarding the importance of improving patient safety. And leaders should be strong role models. They're not infallible and should acknowledge when they've made a mistake. So they make a mistake, they should be speaking up. They should be owning their behavior as well. Next slide, please. It's important to inform staff about all expectations. And so you did that today on the whistleblower. You did that on the PACT Act. You did that on Dignity and Respect campaign. This is what's expected of us. So one of the foremost methods for setting those expectations is to discuss what this means during NEO. And I know that you do that. So people know coming in the door, what kind of culture do we have here at the Albany VA? What have I signed up for? And this discussion should be focused on the meaning and significance of the just culture and how it relates to them in the work that they do, providing care and service to veterans every day. Next slide, please. Organizations employing just culture principles recognize that everyone is held accountable for their actions, and it really doesn't matter role, responsibilities, rank, position at all. All staff are responsible for being situationally aware, and so that's preoccupation with failure. It's reluctance to simplify. It's building resilience, that you're mindful of patient safety and speaking up when you have concerns related to patient safety. This is what I see. This is what I'm concerned about. This is what I would like to see happen. Once this just culture is implemented into everyday practice, staff must be held accountable. And this can be codified in your performance plans. So let's go to the next slide, because an example of performance standards, which highlight right in that opening paragraph, where it highlights that improving safety and reliability requires a just culture of transparency and trust, all the things that we've talked about. And here's a way to build it into performance standards. Okay, the next slide, please. So critical to just culture implementation is sustainability is training. So you have the opportunity in new employee orientation, HRO 101, 201, baseline training, teams training, and you know, so the discussions about what behaviors are acceptable and how we deal with them. New supervisor or manager training is another form where you could have small group activities, case studies, and scenarios like we just went through, and use your own JPSRs, your own RCAs to develop these scenarios and case studies. They're more relatable and effective when you do that. Next slide, please. So assessing staff members' perceptions of a just culture is also essential, and you have the mechanism to do that in the all-employee survey. There's a battery of questions that people get asked every year in a confidential environment, so hopefully they should feel safe and responding directly through the survey. And I won't read through all of these, but it talks about it asks them whether they feel safe in their work group with their supervisor at the Albany VA in bringing up questions, concerns, problems, tough issues, and how the work affects them, how the environment affects them emotionally. Do they feel burnout from their work? And so taking the answers to this section of the all-employee survey gives you an idea of how well you're doing in establishing a just culture and perhaps point you to opportunities for improvement. Next slide, please. So I know I've gone through this rather quickly, but I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. And so in summary, the importance of a just culture, it's in the pursuit of patient safety. And it plays a crucial role in empowering staff to speak up, to be heard, to have agency, and for them to monitor the workplace for potential safety issues. And it engages everyone in a learning organization and building the capacity, continuing to build the capacity and the tools to make the workplace even safer for patients and staff. Next slide, please. So here are some references. This isn't Mary Ellen making this stuff up. We've done a lot of research and culled from the most recent and Sentinel resources. Next, please. Okay, I'm going to take a breath. I know that was pretty quick. Any comments, questions, any thoughts from anyone? Okay, if not, I will turn it back to Mary Ann and Chino.
Thank you,
very
Mary
much,
Ellen.
Mary
That
Ellen.
was great. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
No, I was just going to say thank you very much, Mary Ellen. We really appreciate your expertise in sharing the information about just culture with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mary Ann, let's
Chino?
open it to the virtual group. Any questions, concerns? This is all about you. It's your town hall. Anything that we can answer, here's an opportunity to ask those questions. Okay, hearing nothing. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next town hall. I'm sorry. See you in the next town hall, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.